Good afternoon, advisors. Welcome to the second webinar in our 2015 series. This year we're focusing on a family, the Greens, all 4 generations. And as with any family, there's drama. They're bold and beautiful. They're young and restless. We'll paint their portrait of risk and look at ways to protect the family and the family business. How will we do it? With insurance solutions tailored to meet their needs as they travel through the days of their lives. They all have just one life to live, but that life will be filled with glee at times and with passions at others. But through it all and across the generations, they have a guiding light, a trusted team with you, their fee-only financial advisor, and LLIS, the advisor's insurance advisor. Each month's series will last about 50 minutes. The narrators of these hour-long series know you'll have burning questions, and since these are performed in front of a live audience, feel free to be interactive. Type in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them timely or at the conclusion of the show. Today's episode is being recorded and will be posted to our website within a week in case you missed a pivotal moment in the story. And throughout 2015, loyal fans will receive 10 CPE credits, 1 for each month. The more you tune in, the more you know. Today we focus on the patriarch of the family and his wishes to leave a public and private legacy. Today's narrator is himself a patriarch and a hero. Some of LLIS's greatest storylines involve this man. There's the policies he's partnered with insurance companies to create solely for fee-only advisors and their clients. And how can we forget the battle between father and son back in 2003 when Mark came on board here, clawing his way to the top to president and CEO now. This man's run has been a long one, about 45 years. That rivals Susan Lucci. But unlike Susan Lucci, he won the first award he was nominated for, and he's been winning ever since. And now to present this month's episode, please welcome Keith Maurer.
Actually, I think Dean has been watching too much television. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about the idea of leaving a public and a private legacy. For those of you who are confused at what that means we're going to talk about charitable giving and estate planning with a little twist. Oh, wait, no, I think I need to do something first, right? Hit it again. One more time, folks. There we go. Are they hearing something? Do we hear the music of Days of Our Lives? This drama is going to enter into a new series of, since I've never watched television on this stuff, I have no idea what's going on. But this is our soap opera of the Green family, with the Days of Our Lives and all their families and all their twists and turns. So I'm getting more enjoyment out of this. Here's the Greens. The Greens has 4 generations of family, and we're going to today start from the top and work on down. So we're going to talk about the Greens. For those of you who were not with us last month, what you've missed is sort of the background of the Greens. But what we're going to do starting the rest of the year, not mine, mine's going to hear right now, but we're going to talk about the insuring the unusual occupation, which some of them have, the small business owner clients, which some of them are, retirement planning, which some of them are going through, and then children and special needs for children, which some of them have. So sort of I don't know if it's a typical family, but in all situations, there are not anything that's so out of the ordinary you wouldn't run into them during your career. So let's reintroduce the Green family. If you remember, for those of you with us last month, it's sort of simple. If the name starts with an A, which like in Andrew, that's the oldest generation. The next generation, the children's names start with B. That's the Andrew's children. Andrew's grandchildren all start with letter C, and Andrew's great-grandchildren all start with a letter D. So that'll help you maybe as we go along if we talk about names of people and what they are. So here's the family tree. Andrew, who is now a widower, his wife passed away a few years ago. She had Alzheimer's and then passed away. He has 2 children, Barbara, who's, as we're going to find out later, is married, and whose husband left her when she had Cameron, who has Down syndrome. There's Cameron right there. You notice his picture is different than everyone else's in that they actually had to get his picture where he was because to take him into a studio to have his picture taken was too dramatic for him. So it's a situation that we're going to talk about and how Andrew is worried about Barbara, who was a yoga teacher, never really earned much money and doesn't have anything to live on, even though she's now close to retirement, and Cameron, who she's taking care of, who has special needs, and then he has 4 great-grandchildren. So that's the Green family. We're going to focus on Andrew today because he's the one that has the money. If you remember from last time, he has quite a large estate in that it's well into the $10 million level, so he does have estate tax problems, but we're not going to talk about estate tax problems too much today, but he has plenty of money. So what we're going to talk about is using insurance to fund both a public legacy, which is charitable giving, and as well as a private legacy. And then at the end, we're going to talk about how you can do both of those at the same time with the same money. So we're going to focus on the goals of legacy giving, both in the area of public and private legacy. We're going to talk about the ownership structure because it changes, and it depends upon the goals you have, how all of these ownerships should be structured, and then the tax consequences, which then follow, of course, how you've structured the ownership. So it's a little more confusing probably than straightforward life insurance, but it's pretty simple, straightforward after we go through it step by step. So, you know, why do we use life insurance for a public or a private legacy? Well, it's because sort of the same reason we use life insurance for a lot of situations, because it's going to provide cash to the beneficiaries when the insured dies. It's pretty straightforward. And in the public legacy area, cash is what they like. If you've worked with charities, you know, they may like a farm, but they'll probably turn around and sell it because they want cash. The beneficiaries in this situation are showing a family, but it's many times will be a charity, such as a university or some college funding or church or that kind of stuff. So we'll get into that. But it all happens at the insured's death. So what are the advantages of insurance? Well, one of the advantages is taxation at death. It's going to pass on income and capital gains in every kind of form tax-free. That may or may not be more important over years as we look at the current tax laws that are being proposed. And some of you are much more up on this than I am. But once again, the idea of passing assets at death without a stepped-up in cost basis has raised its head. And not with life insurance, but with other assets. And if that happens, then the idea that death benefit passes on income tax-free because you pay a lower premium and all the gain from premium up to death benefit never gets taxed will become even more important in my opinion. Insurance has a predictable, a guaranteed, and in my opinion, a very reasonable to a great internal rate of return. And we'll use that as on a couple examples of what they really are. But it is a calculable rate of return in advance. It's not anticipated. We know exactly what it will be and when it will be. It's stable and predictable. Life insurance, we know what the death benefit is going to be. It's a stated amount. It's stable. It doesn't go up and down as the markets go up and down, interest rates go up and down. We can rely on it. And there's no correlation to the other financial markets. And what I mean by that is both public charities and private all have other assets. I mean, they don't rely only on life insurance funds. So when they have that, they have volatility already built into their portfolios. When the market goes up and the market goes down, interest rates go up, interest rates go down. In some situations, taxations change. All that can vary, but none of it is related to the life insurance. So, you know, if you have a balanced fund, if you have some stocks and some bonds, you know, traditionally we've said, you know, if one goes up, the other will go down, so you balance it, that kind of stuff. Well, those are related. This has no relation to the market, and that can be very reassuring sometimes when you're talking about things that you know for sure you want to have happen and you don't want it to happen at the wrong time. Why do we want to leave a public legacy? Why does people want to give to a charity? Well, I'm not sure this is a good answer, but it is an answer, is that Americans are a generous people. as you can see, the black line there, the solid line, is the actual amount of money, and the other little colored lines are adjusted for inflation over time. But basically, in the last 40 years, the amount of money going each year to a charity has gone up, with a couple of exceptions, a fairly rapid pace. So that 2013, which is the last figure we have, there was $335 billion was donated to charities and nonprofit organizations. So, one thing is people are doing it. It's why it is maybe just because they're generous. They may have other reasons and I'm going to go into a little bit some of the things that are hot buttons for people to give to charities. But this is not something that's just sort of made up in the insurance world. It's really happening. And why use insurance for a public legacy? Well, leveraging is one. We'll talk a little bit about that. Is that in order to hit a $500,000 level or whatever, you can use a premium that's less than that in order to get to the $500,000 gifting level on a deferred gift. The flip side of that is a discount tool. Some requirements, as we're going to see, for a scholarship was $500,000, but yet it didn't cost them $500,000 to get to that level. The replacement tool, I think, is the reason that some people end up doing it. It's not the reason they do it, but it removes the obstacle of why they don't do it, meaning that if they have the assets and they intend it for something like to give to their grandchildren, or they intend it for long-term care, so they don't want to give it away, but with the idea of insurance, you can give it away and replace it at the same time. And we're going to go into that in detail at the end because to me that's the one obstacle why people don't give more, is because they have a reason they have that money and they don't want to give it away. And the one that I'm quite involved with three major charities, and all of them have this, and the effect of recognition of a gift should never, ever be underestimated. There are people who will, and any charity that you work with or associated with or give to, I am 99% sure that all of them have that says, well, if you would just give another $250, then you will be at the next plateau of givers, and you will be on this page of the program instead of that page on the program. Or you can park out front free, or you can come to the donors recognition meal or something. They all have things to encourage people to give and to give bigger amounts and to sort of separate those who give large amounts. So that recognition is a motivator for a lot of people who have money that are thinking about charities, and to get them to do a larger amount. These programs are in existence, and I've seen it happen numerous times in the charities I've been working with, and I'm sort of amazed sometimes at that, but it's truth. So sort of to reiterate what I just said, a leveraging tool, the death benefit always exceeds the premiums paid, but that so you get recognized for a larger amount than the actual pay, and it sort of increases the if you say, I've given $500,000, even though it's a deferred gift, it somehow sort of matches your emotion and your what yields you get out of giving it. The discounting tool is sort of the same thing, only looking at the other ways. We're going to see, you could give $500,000 for something, or you can pay life insurance premiums of a much less and still give the $500,000 and will go into the charity. The replacement tool, like I said, I'm going to talk about this quite a bit in detail, but the concept basically is that when you give to a charity, it is a deductible item. It's tax deductible, and therefore you do get some refund. I mean, assuming you pay the same taxes, and now you give something to the charity, you'll get a bigger refund or a refund. And if you use that refund money to replenish what it was that you gave away, it's sort of the replacement tool is why, not sort of why people do it, but it's the reason that they removes the obstacle of why they don't do it. And like I said, recognition, I found this to be amazing, powerful tool. Naming rights for a building, you have to give quite a bit of money to do that. naming rights for a room inside a new construction building, a scholarship under the family name, and then donor recognition being listed in the page with all the big donors and getting the extra pin and that kind of stuff. And I'll show you an example of that here in a little bit going on too. But first, we sort of have got to talk about the realities of charitable giving. That sometimes is a surprise to financial advisors, and definitely a surprise to some people who want to give money, is just because you want to give a life insurance policy, for example, to a charity, does not mean that the insurance company is going to underwrite it and allow it to happen. There has to be a reason. And this sort of falls on you, and we can help you with that. We know how to write these letters, but there has to be a reason. For Andrew to just one day decide he's going to give money to the Alzheimer organization may make sense because his wife had Alzheimer's and then died. If he wanted to give it to the National Down Syndrome organization, wouldn't make sense because he has a grandson that has that. So that's a reason for giving. A history of giving is even stronger. If you have never given to an organization before and all of a sudden want to give $1 million insurance policy, there has to be a very strong reason. Number one better be pretty strong. But if number two is strong, it's much easier. If you have a record of giving to your church or your synagogue or your university or your charity, then the idea that you would give an insurance policy to perpetuate that past your death makes sense. It gives you an insurable interest. There has to be an insurable interest. Insurance companies won't issue insurance policy without insurable interest. So those first two things are relying upon you to write a letter. And if you don't understand what I'm saying and you have somebody who wants to do that, talk to me, probably myself or Judith would be the first two people that I would suggest you talk in this office of how to write that letter. And you need to understand it. If they just decide one day they want to give to some charity, it may not be an opportunity for insurance. And finally, you need to understand, will the charity actually accept a life insurance policy? Some will not. Some will only accept an insurance policy if it's paid up, if it's guaranteed paid up, and some will just not accept an insurance policy. They want only current assets. If you give them an insurance policy, they're going to turn right around and surrender it for whatever cash value they can get out of it. So find out if they will accept a policy, because not all charities will. So that's sort of the underwriting part of it. That's sort of real-world stuff. So now let's talk about the ownership of it when you want to give to a charity. So who should be the owner? Well, one option, which is usually the situation, is the charity itself. The charity is the owner and the beneficiary. Actually, the charity is the applicant of the insurance. Your client is the insured, and the charity is the beneficiary. So how does that work? Well, the charity signs as the applicant, the insured signs as the insured, and the person has to take the exam, it gets approved, and then premiums then are paid to the charity and therefore are deductible. And there's a deduction each time you pay a premium. For most charities, and most charities that I've been associated with, they want either already paid up policy, or they want a single premium policy, or they want a very short pay policy. What they usually are very hesitant to have or want is something that says this premium has to be paid for the next 20 years or 30 years or life or whatever, because the donor may decide sometime that they don't want to pay the premium, don't like the charity anymore, can't pay the premium, and then the charity is stuck with this policy that says it could have a very nice value and rate of return, but the premium has to be paid. So do they go into their own coffers with other people's donations to pay a premium on someone else's life if the donor doesn't do it anymore? So again, beware of that if your client is thinking about doing this, the charities are most likely, unless they're very strongly tied to that charity, will want a short pay or single pay or already paid up policy. And then you and the client need to be determined to make sure that the charity is actually a long-lasting charity. An example of that would be here in the Tampa Bay area, there was a charity that basically took abused pets and injured wild animals, birds and leopards around here, Florida panthers and bears and that kind of stuff they're wounded, maybe hit by a car, and they take them. They got a lot of publicity a few years back, or maybe 2-3 years back, where a man committed suicide. He jumped off a Skyway bridge, and his dog actually went after him. The man died, but the dog lived. And this dog then became sort of famous, and these people treated him back to life, and then he got adopted, and it was a really big deal for almost a year. Well, donations poured in. Well, after a couple more years, an investigation was done, and they found that, first of all, a lot of the money wasn't going to taking care of the animals, and number two, that the animals, because of some of the publicity, I guess, is they were just overrun with animals, and the animals were living in treacherous, terrible situation, and the state came in, closed them up, the health organizations, whichever one it was, and their charitable status was withdrawn. So, you know, it's a charity. Just because it's a charity today, and maybe a great charity, doesn't necessarily mean it's long-lasting. So, you know, most situations you want to make sure that it's a kind of an organization that will be long-lasting, and at least to your client's death. Because remember, gifts are not reversible. You give money to a charity, and it's the charity's money. Whatever happens to the charity, so goes your money. It doesn't come back to you. So if you give it away, it's gone. So here is if the charity is the owner and the beneficiary. In this situation, Andrew, and he wants to give money to his university. The university is the owner and the beneficiary, and like I said, would be applicant on the application for the insurance. After he's approved, Andrew then makes a donation to the university. Then the university takes the money and pays the insurance premium, and then at his death, the charity would get the death benefit. Now, another form of ownership is the donor is the owner. In other words, Andrew would stay the owner of the policy. In that situation, the charity is only the beneficiary. There's no taxation or deductions available at this time. The death benefit would be included in the estate. However, at the time of the estate would then pay a deductible amount to the charity, so it's deducted as a payout after the estate, but it's included and then taken out. Andrew, since he's the owner of it, he has a choice of any kind of premium pattern he wants. He can single pay it, double, skip premiums, pay it long time. Makes no difference because the charity doesn't really come into play until he dies. No premiums are deductible. Just by making the charity the beneficiary does not make anything deductible. However, he can change his mind, and he can change his charity, which in the kid's situation I gave a while ago about the animal shelter, he could have then simply picked another animal shelter if animals was what his thing was about. Or he could say, I don't want to give any charity. I'm going to give it to my mistress. He can give it to anything he wants to. But more for him, and this is true of many of the people that we work with, is it's split charities, meaning that they don't want it all to go to one charity. In the example before, where the university was the owner and beneficiary, for that policy, all the death benefits are going to go to the university. If he wants part of it to go to another charity, he would really have to have another policy, another different owner. So split charities where he wants to give numerous ones, maybe just being the owner of it and don't worry about current deductions is the way to go. So it all depends. So the owner is a donor. There simply Andrew is the applicant. He pays the premiums to the insurance company, and then see Andrew there. He went from being Andrew to being Gravestone. Now the insurance company, he can have in this situation. He had two beneficiaries. He had his university, and he had the National Down Syndrome Society because of his grandson who has Down syndrome. So that could be an example of how that would work. The charity doesn't come into play until the beneficiary, until he actually dies, and it's a beneficiary. So what did Andrew really do? Well, Andrew is a trustee at a university. At the end here, you're going to figure out which university this is, because I'm sure all you were just wondering what university did Andrew go to. You'll find out. And he has a history. He's been giving $10,000 to his university for many years, and it's just the same amount every year. Most of the Greens in his family were business people, and Andrew and the family would like to have a scholarship for students majoring only in business at this one university. So what does the university say? The university says in order to set up a funded scholarship, the minimum amount is $500,000 into the endowment fund, and it can be a deferred gift, meaning it can be insurance, it could have been a farm, it could have been anything that wasn't necessarily cash at the time, can be a deferred gift. But minimum is $500,000 to have a named scholarship. So that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to endow a green family scholarship for students majoring in business, and in order to get the $500,000 minimum, he did it himself. Now, point here is that Andrew is age 70. A lot of times we think insurance is only for people in their 35s and 40s, and once you reach about 60 or 65, insurance is probably not a good deal anymore. Well, for charitable giving, maybe it's still a very good deal. He's age 70. He decided to do a 4-pay, $47,500, and that guarantees a $500,000 policy. Sort of the discounting tool is he gets credit for $500,000 because it's a deferred gift, and it cost him $190,000. If he did it all in cash, he'd have to give him $500,000 and have a $500,000 scholarship. So it's sort of the discounting. The replacement tool didn't come into play here. Funding it is not a challenge for Andrew. He had plenty of money. He did not look at this as a deductible thing. That was not in his mind at all. It was basically he wanted to set up this scholarship. And so by doing so, and the university being the owner of the policy, they established the Green Family Business Scholarship. If his wife would have still been alive, we'll go back real quick. This looks like the same thing, but this is a single life 4-pay for $47,500. If his wife would have still been alive in a standard, and with Alzheimer's, he wouldn't have had to go through it anyway, but just assume she had not died and didn't have Alzheimer's, she was also age 40, then the 4-pay would be $39,950. The same thing, guarantees of $500,000. The discount is bigger because it's a survivorship. Again, there's not a challenge for the funding, and the recognition would be exactly the same. Now, it just so happens that this was Andrew's 50th class reunion. And at the class reunion, and this is one of the reasons why they approached him to set up the scholarship at this time, at the class reunion, they announced the Green Family Scholarship. But what did that do for good old Andrew? Andrew, he went from the Gold Gator to the Diamond Gator. So you now know, for those of you who are sports fans, you now know what university that Andrew went to. The Mighty Gators, yes. Okay, well, moving right along. Okay, now we're going to talk about private legacies. So, what is private legacy? Well, private legacy to me is a different word for estate planning, but it's in estate planning a different definition, and my definition is how do you distribute assets to those you love at death? And those you love don't necessarily have to be a person. It can be a charity, it can be a business, it can be everything. But right now we're going to talk about people. And how do you want to distribute your assets, and what assets do you want to use to do what? So leaving a private legacy with the insurances, the advantages, well, it's guaranteed. It's a guaranteed amount. Most of the time in these kind of legacies, there is a specific amount in mind that they want, and you can guarantee it will be exactly that amount. Again, it leverages premiums to the face amount. You don't need to put in $500,000 to have a $500,000 benefit. Again, the income tax-free, and in most times it can be state tax-free as well if it's set up properly or if there's a problem. And it also has a contracted beneficiary. What does that mean? That means, number one, it doesn't go through probate because it passes by contract. And number two, it also means that it is very easy to change the beneficiary. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need to rewrite the documents. There's not a lot of hassle. You can do it, theoretically, you could do it every day if you wanted to. So it's very flexible in that and gives you a lot of control without a lot of hoops to jump through. So why would you use the insurance advantages in private legacy? Well, to fund estate taxes, and you know, we're hearing all kinds of weird stuff about estate taxes in the future, but in this situation, when we went through last month about all the specifics of all the people, and Andrew specifically, he has an estate tax problem. I'm not going to address that today because everybody talks about, you know, estate taxes and all that kind of stuff and how life insurance is so good for that, and it is. But most of our clients don't have estate taxes anymore. They may have state estate taxes, but federal estate taxes for most of our clients are probably not a concern today yet. The replenish and preserve assets distributed to death, that I'm going to pass on for right now because I'm going to go in detail. That's, again, sort of how can you have your cake and eat it too. Because life insurance is cash, you avoid that fire sales because in all times at death, if you've ever been involved in that with a parent or a friend or a spouse or a child or whatever, there is cash that needs to be done for the funeral, for health, for ambulance, for a lot of stuff. And so rather than have a fire sale saying, what do I sell, and it's a good time to sell it, life insurance provides the cash. I say equalize the estate for the heirs, and that's usually what we talk about, is that when you have two children, one's in the business, one is not, you want the one person to have the business, so what do you give the other one? Well, you know, lo and behold, I'd suggest life insurance. But also sometimes to unequalize the estate by setting up something special because someone needs something special, like when you have a special needs child or something like that. So it can be to equalize or to purposely unequalize the estate. And then something, I think it's September, I talk about why capital insurance at death can be very helpful for a business, and for business insurance and employees for business and that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that later in the year. Again, you know, why do we use insurance for the private legacy estate planning? Same thing. It's a leveraging, it's a discount tool, it's a replacement tool. So who are we protecting today? Well, today we're going to focus on Andrew again. Andrew is the one who's going to be insured. But who is he protecting? Number one, he's going to protect Barbara. Barbara does not have any savings, has never had much of a paying job. She's always had a job, but it's things that Andrew is considered sort of artsy and never really, and Andrew's such a business-driven man and has tons of money, and he has continued to support Barbara, as we talked about last month, and will continue for the rest of his life. But also Cameron. Cameron, as we said, is a special needs child, and Barbara is taking care of him as best she can via help from Andrew. But should something happen to Andrew and Barbara, what would happen to poor Cameron? And you can say, well, he has a sister, Claire, but would Sister Claire and husband Tony want to take care of Andrew when they have 3 children of their own? Maybe they would, but probably not a burden they want to do. So he wants to take care of Barbara, Cameron, and also then he wants to take care of his 4 great-grandchildren in the form of wanting to have money for them to go to college. He has had friends tell him of how expensive college is getting to be. He's on a board of trustees of a university where they continue to raise the entrance fees, and if you go to a private school, it's even more, and it's growing faster. So while he can't ensure that they'll get a college education, he can help ensure that there will be money there for the college education should he not be there. And it's something that he is more concerned about than his own children or grandchildren. His great-grandchildren are the ones that he is concerned about as far as making sure there's money there for their college education. So let's talk about this policy ownership. Well, number one, Andrew could own it. Andrew could, and we're going to talk about each one of these separately. Andrew could own his own policy and control it all. He could have his children be the owner of the policy. That would take it out of the state, but then the children have control. Or a third option would be an irrevocable life insurance trust. Now, there's other combinations of ownership, but those are the 3 I'm going to focus on today for right now. What happens if Andrew is the owner of this policy that's really for Barbara and Cameron and the great-grandchildren? Well, first of all, the death benefit would be included in his taxable estate, which is not a good deal in his situation. He already has an estate tax problem, and throwing in another $1.4 million on top of that really means there's only going to be about $700,000 of it probably will ever get to where it needs to go. However, he does retain control, and which gives him the right to make any changes he wants along the way. Should something happen that he wants to make changes, and he's not using up any gifting. He does use gifts, and he can have this policy. He can own himself. Therefore, he has not used up any his annual or lifetime gifting to fund this policy, if that's a concern. How about the children being the ownership? Well, first of all, the children must be age of majority, and in this family they would be. But do you have all the children, some of the children? It's always a question. It would be excluded from Andrew's estate, but it could be included in the children's estate because his children, because that's who would be the owner. They now have control of the policy, which may or may not be what he really wants ultimately. And Andrew would then be making gifts to the owners, not to the beneficiaries, but to the owners. So how many owners do you have, and how many gifts can you have, and are you using those all up is something you may want to consider. Third option would be an irrevocable life insurance trust. Now, here it is again excluded from the estate because the trust is the owner of the policy and the beneficiary. No longer is Andrew the owner or beneficiary. The trustee controls the trust and the policy, and therefore the policy. Andrew now makes gifts to the named beneficiaries of the trust. So he may be able to make more gifts, or be able to make smaller gifts per person and still give other gifts to the same beneficiaries without using up his annual gift exclusion. And sometimes this is very important to some people. You can control it from the grave. Now, what do I mean by that? I have seen, and I've actually read some of these, similar to Andrew's, but in that it said that there would be money available for college education provided he goes to med school. If he doesn't go to med school, no money. We have seen some that says that if they get married before age 21, there's no money. Certain things that are just in some of these are almost humorous sometimes, but are very controlling and legal, and sometimes make it very hard to get around, and probably can't get around it. And lastly, and this is sometimes important, is that it is creditor, creditor, and divorce proof. Now that may look a lot like Rob Lowe to you, and it probably looks a lot like Rob Lowe to Rob Lowe, but that's the slimy lot, Rob Lowe. You only know that if you see the commercial. But and I'll touch on it right now. You remember that Barbara, when she was married to this gentleman, I'll call him a gentleman for now. Anyway, when they had their son Cameron, and it became obvious that Cameron had some challenges, he left. Didn't get a divorce, just left. Haven't heard from him since. Andrew is scared spitless to say that, when I die and Barbara gets money, because I'm going to make sure she gets money, then this guy could reappear and have a claim on it because he is still her husband. Now, you have to hire all kinds of lawyers and stuff like that, and you say, well, there's probably ways to stop that. But one way to stop it is have it not by Barbara, but by the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust to protect her from this guy. So creditor proof, and divorce proof. But now we have another decision. So let's assume we do the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust. Now picking the trustee as fiduciary and choose wisely. Who can we choose? Well, you can't choose a family member. That could be a good option. It doesn't have to be. Now, it's not gifting that's the concern. Is do you have a family member that you feel comfortable with that knows about maybe a little bit about insurance, a little bit about trust, a little bit about the legality of it, how to send out crummy letters and stuff like that. Most people don't. The family member is just a level-headed kind of guy or a girl, and so they name them the trustee. Sometimes it's not the best choice. How about the attorney, the CPA, or you, their financial advisor? Could be a good choice. Again, are they familiar with what needs to be done, and do they want to be the fiduciary of the trust? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Same sort of questions. Do they understand what it takes to be a trustee? A trusted friend. We see this more often than I think we should. And in this situation, this woman happens to be Andrew's longtime personal secretary. And she's continued to be that after that he's retired. She takes care of his books. She takes care of his appointments. And is truly trusted, but doesn't really know the family all that well other than Andrew, and definitely does not know anything about the legality of a trust. So while it may think like it's a good choice because from Andrew's point of view, she just thinks like I think and she would know what I want to be done with the money, may not be the best choice. And then there are professional trust companies. I've heard good news and bad news about those. Some have great reputation, others don't. They usually are around for a long period of time, if not forever, so that they will be there when the Andrew dies and we'll have to distribute the money. Or what we see a lot of is a combination of two, where it could be you, the financial advisor, with a trust company, or a family member in the trust company where they're co-beneficiaries and where they both have to agree before something can happen. So you get the professional handling of it and as well as the guidance from someone else that knew Andrew personally. So an ILIT as the owner. Again, the ILIT is the applicant and Andrew is only the insured. As to the policies issued, the ILIT is the owner and beneficiary. Andrew gifts premiums, gifts money to the ILIT. The ILIT then has the money and they send out crummy letters. For those of you who don't know what a crummy letter is, it has nothing to do with a very bad written letter. You said, boy, this is a crummy letter. It's not that. Crummy is actually someone's name. And what it basically says, without getting too legalese, is that the letter says that there was money put into this trust for you, the beneficiary of this trust, and you can take it out right now. Or if you don't do anything within 30 days, then the trust will invest it or use it as it sees fit, and in this situation, it will, after 30 days, then put money into the insurance company for the insurance policy so that it is a gift of current value rather than a deferred gift. So that's the concept of the crummy letter, that you have a chance to take the money out right then. If you don't, then it can become part of a deferred gift into life insurance. Then obviously when Andrew dies, the money goes into the trust and it can be distributed by the trustee to however the trust is written in whatever form it's said it's going to be given. So this situation, Julia was Andrew's wife. They set this up 10 years ago. They set this up when they were both age 60, and Julia did not have Alzheimer's at this time. And by the way, the numbers I'm giving you, they were both standard age 60s people. And they bought an insurance policy, had it set up an irrevocable life insurance trust for Barbara, Cam, which is her son, and the 4 great-grandchildren. The amount of the money was the amount of the death benefit was $1.4 million. The premium was $28,470 per year for 10 years to guarantee the $1.4 million. What happens? $1 million of it is designated for Barbara to take care of Cameron, and it therefore protects, because it's in the trust and it's not Barbara's, is protected against her ex-husband who may or may not come back. And if Barbara dies before Cameron, then the trust, the trust would then fund Cameron's needs by the use of whatever's left of that $1 million. And it also ensures $100,000 to be paid to each grandchild should they go to college. So there can be other wording of what happens if the kid doesn't go to college, what happens to the rest of the money, and that kind of stuff. It's all can be written into the trust, but that was the intent. So I talked to you about one thing. I said the life insurance is pretty good rate of return. In this specific policy, what is the internal rate of return? Well, after 25 years, if you take a cash flow, putting in $28,475 into a fund over 10 years, each year for 10 years, in order to have $1.4 million in 25 years, that fund would have had to earn $8.35 net after tax every year for 25 years. And after 30 years, it'll have a rate of return of equivalent to basically 6%, compounded every year for 30 years. So that's a pretty good rate of return, plus it's guaranteed, plus it's net after tax. So to get a guaranteed net after tax rate of that rate is probably very difficult, if not impossible to find in today's market. May be able to get it, but not necessarily guaranteed. So they were pleased with this rate of return, and Andrew understands that kind of stuff. So here we have sort of the same situation. They raised 60. The premiums, it's a discount too. They got $1.4 million eventually being paid out for paying in $284,750. The replacement tool, which I'm going to talk about next, was not coming into play, and basically is taking care of Barbara, Cameron, and his great-grandchildren. Like I said, it's not a equalization because there are other children, grandchildren, but that's being done at another point in time. That's what this one was for. So let's talk a little bit, because I think this is sort of the heart and meat of this thing, is what about a combo? What about a public and private legacy? Now, Andrew had two good friends, Mr. and Mrs. Goodhart. The good news is about the Goodharts is that they are doctors that are both surgeons. I mean, what a great name to have a surgeon be Goodhart. I mean, why would you like it to be Death or something? You know, if you're going to have a doctor, have a name be Goodhart. So they are both age 60, both working, both making very good salaries. And they were approached by the hospital they work at that they said, we need to upgrade our operation room, our heart operation room. It is getting old, it's getting dated, and we need $500,000 to upgrade that. And we would like for you to donate the money to do that, and we would therefore name the operating room the Goodhart operating room, which they thought about for a while. And they said, you know, we actually have $500,000 set aside, but we sort of were planning on giving that to our grandchildren when we die. It's just something we sort of wanted to do, and they'd planned it for many, many years, and they put money away and invested it. So, but they sort of want to do the operating room as well. Can they do both? Well, let's talk about option one. What the Goodharts said they're doing, they're still working. They said to the hospital, keep continuing withholding exactly what we're doing now, so our take-home pay doesn't change, not affected by what we do in this next thing. And they said that they would give $100,000 a year, each year for 5 years, to the hospital to start, and they, with the first donation, they started and paid for a new operating room. Well, what happens? Being a deductible item, and for right now, I'm using a 30% rate of return or tax bracket. They're probably, at their savings and with state taxes and everything else, would be much higher than that. But with a 30% marginal tax and now a new tax deduction, because remember, they didn't change their withholding, they got back basically $30,000 in tax refund every year for 5 years. How did they use that tax refund money that they got, which is sort of newfound money? They bought a survivorship life insurance policy for them. So what happened? The Goodharts' net income, living, everything stayed exactly the same. The hospital got a $500,000 operating room, and the Goodharts got a office in their name. And the children are now not going to get $500,000, and it depends upon if they have state tax or not. The children fund goes to $750,000 to $850,000. Now, you can say the $500,000 would grow to that probably anyway by the time they die, and that's probably true, but they wouldn't have the hospital have a room named after them. So in this situation, they actually have their cake and eat it too. They gave the $500,000 away, and yet their grandchildren did not lose the $500,000. As a matter of fact, the grandchildren actually gained a little bit. So this is the concept that we use actually quite a bit, where they have the money, the charity needs the cash. They don't want an insurance policy. They want cash. But yet, and they have the cash, but they had a different intent and purpose for it. So because it's a deductible item, they can take their refund, use that refund, buy insurance, and replenish it. So that's what I mean by sort of replenishment and replacement. Let's talk about option 2. Option 2. They're still working, same thing, and they have the $500,000, but it wasn't for their kids or their grandkids. It was for them. They had put this away should they need it for long-term care. $500,000, they've put it away, and they're not going to touch it unless they need it for long-term care. What's option 2? They gave the whole $500,000 lump sum to the hospital right now. They get a one-time deduction, and instead of buying a survivorship of a lot of life insurance, they bought 2 hybrid life insurance policies, one in her name, one in his name. The premiums were a little different because the sex is different, but the amount ended up being the same. And so net result is the Goodhart's income and standard of living didn't change one penny. The hospital got their $500,000 donation for their operating room, and they now have, at age 85, because it's a 3% compounded benefit, each gets $456,000 pool. Before they only had one $500,000 pool that they were obviously going to grow, but now they have, for long-term care benefits, they each have $456,000, and should they not use it and they die, they're still if neither of them use it, there'd be over $200,000 death benefit that would go to somebody, maybe their grandkids. But that's not the play. The play here was, why did they have the $500,000? They wanted it for long-term care. Can you have the hospital have their office, their operating room, and they get to long-term care too? Yes, they can. That's sort of the sizzle, in my opinion, of how you can have both a private and a public legacy. So the Goodharts, what did they do? They took their old operating room, old, drab, and terrible, and probably germs running around there if you look real close, to bingo, a spick and span, brand new, clean operating room with big lights and stuff you'd see on television and as the world turns. And they've taken care of either their grandchildren or themselves for long-term care. So what have we talked about? Public and private legacies, charitable giving, and estate planning. Why do you do it? How do you structure it? And what's the taxation of it? So stay tuned next month for the new episode of Can Ben, who has not done anything about his retirement, can he retire on time? Thanks to the superheroes of Jerry and Jill, they will find a way. Stay tuned and tune back in on May 19th to find out how Ben can retire. And by the way, a couple things. Do you know we have a new website? If you haven't, please check it out. I think it looks pretty good. And for those of you who are going to the NAFA meeting in San Diego next month, stop by and say hello to Mark and Jerry. And here's what we're going to, the Green family is going through for the next few months. Let's see, where am I? I think I'm in September, creating ways to keep and reward employees, but we'll also talk about other forms of business insurance. But you see, so the other topics there all having to do with the Green family and the multiple generations. For those of you who don't know, and I think most of you do, we sponsor pretty much every organization that of all you that are attending today, one of these, and we're proud to do and glad to do it. Hope to see you at your meetings when we're there. And thank you. I didn't leave much time for questions. I don't have a lot of questions that are applicable. If there is, you can type them in. But if you think about it later, a question, most of you know my email address. If not, send it to anybody here and they'll find me. I'll be glad to answer anything of what I addressed and talked about. So there's just my name at LLIS.com. And since I've really run out of time, I was hoping to get through this a little bit quicker, but it's a thing that's near and dear to my heart, and I think it's very rewarding. We had one of the financial planners who I didn't ask for permission to use her name, so I won't, said it was the most rewarding time of her financial planning career to work with someone who wanted to give money away to a charity. So it can be rewarding not only for them, but for you as well, and you meet some very nice people. So thank you so much for attending, and I guess I'm over now. Bye.